it starts off comedic because he starts breaking everything, all the toiletries in the bathroom. Can you imagine like a robot character that's moving around like this? And then all of a sudden, you look away, and when you look back, they're now doing this. And you're like, what is going on? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stay Hydrated, Hydration Nation, Hydration Station, Water Break, whatever we're gonna call it. I noticed recently that on Netflix, they've re-released, probably for like the 1 millionth time on any service. Actually, I don't know, maybe this is the first time on any service, but apparently it's a big deal that Evangelion has been released on Netflix. Now, Evangelion is a show that is actually really quite old, and I watched it quite a long time ago. But that's probably the main reason why I want to make this video. In Japan, I've been watching it on Netflix, and I've only watched the first couple episodes again, and again, it's like the second or third time I've watched this show in my entire life. At the end of the episode, they play a certain song by a certain person, and it was exactly the same as I remember it. And I went on the internet and I made my own tweet. I was like, it's gonna be really funny on Spotify because they're gonna be like, why is everyone searching for this one track? And then one of the replies I said is, oh, it's such a shame that they couldn't get the rights to that song again. I was like, what are you talking about? And apparently, in the West, they didn't actually get the rights to play the song at the end of the show. And so it's a different ending credits song. So to start with, it's not a consistent experience. When I talk to a friend who's living in the West about, hey, did you watch Evangelion? It must have been really nostalgic when it got to that ending song. And they just look at me blankly like, what are you talking about? It's a different song. And so we're watching the same show, but we're having an inconsistent experience. And that's only one thing. And again, I'm not actually complaining that it's not the same song. I totally get why sometimes licensing is difficult and why they have to change these things. But this is the sort of thing that can happen. If it's not made clear, then we have these misunderstandings, and who knows where else these things could be happening. For example, what I'm watching right now is the original Japanese voice acting, and so it's like, isn't it so funny when Shinji says this thing to Misato, he's like, Misato-san, Misato-san. In the Western version, maybe, I don't even know if it's written anywhere in the description, but it's apparently a completely different English dub to the original show. And so if you are coming back to Evangelion, let's say you've paid your money to Netflix so that you can re-experience the nostalgia of this show that you loved when you were a kid, or just, even if you didn't love it, it just had a profound effect on you that you remember for the rest of your life. You come back and you pay your Netflix subscription, which is what, I don't know, between $8 and $15 per month. You boot it up and you're like, haha, yeah, let's watch Evangelion. Oh, but this is a little bit different. And the thing is, a lot of people will be coming to watch this show out of nostalgia. Other people will be saying, hey, it's on Netflix now. You should definitely check out this show. I watched it as a kid, and now you can watch it too. They're gonna come back and go, yeah, I didn't think the song really worked that well at the end. And it turns out they just had a completely different experience to you. And so it became really clear to me how important physical media is, because I've become, especially in the past 2 years, mainly because of the Nintendo Switch, I feel like I really don't want any more physical products in my life anymore. I mean, as I've been talking about, I've got monitors and computers, and I've already got plenty of physical products that I have to bring around with me everywhere. My life just becomes easier when I go all digital. It's a more convenient experience. But as consumers, as recipients of these cultural artifacts, we lose something really important when we go all digital, because we kind of sacrifice our right to experience something the way we did the first time. That experience, if you go all digital, and for example, if in terms of movie watching, I'm not talking like digital as in you download the file, I'm talking about streaming services, then you sacrifice your right to continue watching that movie the way that you wanted to watch it, or the way you first watched it. And the biggest one for me was Star Wars. I had no idea when I put that DVD in, because remember, Star Wars for the longest time was only on VHS. I think George Lucas was quite against the idea of DVD for the longest time, and then eventually he got on board with DVD, and got so on board with DVD, started changing all the CG, and then adding extra song and dance numbers into this movie. And I felt very upset about it. Of course, it's his movie, they can do whatever they want with it. It's totally up to them if they decide to stop selling the old version and only sell the new version. But at that point, what was promised to us, or it's not that it was promised to us explicitly, but it is marketed in that way. Streaming services are kind of this promise. All the music you love, and all the movies you've always loved, available at your fingertips, at the snap of your fingers, anytime you want it. You can just log in and watch any of the trillions of millions of movies and songs that you've listened and watched to your whole life. But what's actually happening is you're being charged a monthly service for something which is extremely convenient, but they can just give you whatever they want, and they have no specific responsibility to give you the exact version that you wanted. And Evangelion is massively different, right? Because apparently not only is the English dub different, but apparently the English subtitles are different. And so while I'm sitting here watching like the vanilla Japanese experience, you can't actually sit down and watch the vanilla English dub or English subtitle experience. Now you've just got to take what they've given you, unless you have the physical artifact, the VHS. But the thing is, no matter how well you preserve a VHS, no matter how well you keep that product, it's going to slowly decay and erode and corrode over time. And that brings on the next important discussion of piracy, because I have always looked at piracy and gone, well, you know, if they don't want us to copy it, then it's their right to say, don't copy it, right? But at the same time, the argument for piracy has always been, well, we have a right to back up these things, and you're not always going to support PlayStation 1, so maybe when you stop making PlayStation 1s, I want to still be able to play my games, and so I have a right to back them up. And I ended up really, really on the fence. I was just like, yeah, but it's theirs, so they get to decide. Oh, but at the same time, I did pay my money, so I get to decide. But the truth is, I paid my money for the right to play it, not for the right to play it forever, and so it's very, 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 very important that we start clearing these things up going ahead, because we're not sure what we're paying for. We're not sure what we're buying anymore. And even, to be honest, from the start, we haven't ever really been sure. It's just that it's really, like, the rug is being pulled out from under us. They're like, guess what? You never really owned this stuff, and so now we can just take it away from you. I don't even think it's really as malicious as that in most cases, but that is what's happening. Companies will discover, wait, do we owe them a certain thing? Well then, if we don't, why are we putting all this money and effort into giving them something that they didn't actually pay for? You paid for the rights to enjoy the game. You didn't really pay for the code and everything that was physically burnt into that CD-ROM. Basically, it's really complex. And I have one final example that kind of pissed me off. Recently, I was watching a DVD of E.T., the Extraterrestrial, a movie that you may have heard of. What I didn't know, going into the DVD experience, because I have not watched E.T. since I was a kid, and actually even when I was a kid, the movie was already old, but I watched a VHS, and it was the same experience that my elder siblings had watched when the movie actually came out. And so it was like, they could be happy for me that I had now also seen E.T. But can you imagine asking your younger siblings or your own children to go and watch a Disney movie, and turns out they've replaced the genie with, I don't know, the donkey from Shrek or something? It's just becoming clear to me that we can guide people to our favorite animes and stuff, but when they go to finally watch it, they won't actually get the same experience that we got. And I think we need to start becoming quite conscious of that, because it happens incredibly easy in social networking and Twitter, where one person says one thing and another person says another thing, and it turns out there was just a misunderstanding right at the beginning. We weren't even watching the same version of the program. You were watching a version where one of the characters says, "I love you" to another character, and I was watching a version where a character says, "I like you" to another character. And the English, that's quite different. Now, in the Japanese original, it's exactly the same and hasn't changed. But in terms of these two different versions, with these two different interpretations, and these two different storylines and narratives that are told through the art of localization and translation, we could be getting a very different experience, and I'm not even aware that we're arguing about something that was changed without being explicitly told to us. Again, I'm not trying to say that it's a bad thing or that it's a good thing. Personally, the past couple of years, because of Switch, I'm really into the all digital life. It's really, really convenient. But when I opened up that DVD and it was exactly like I remembered it as a child, like the nostalgia came rushing in. I was like, oh, this music is so Christmassy and John Williams-y. I was having quite the experience getting back into the original E.T. And then there's this scene where E.T., it starts off comedic because he starts breaking everything, all the toiletries in the bathroom. But then suddenly, he becomes lifelike and he starts moving like a human. Can you imagine like a robot character that's moving around like this? And then all of a sudden you look away, and when you look back, they're now doing this. And you're like, what is going on? Wasn't expecting that. I don't want to say that it ruined the movie for me, and I do understand that maybe that was closer. The CG version was closer to what the director had in mind for the movie right from the start, but I had paid my money renting that DVD to have a nostalgic experience watching a movie that I've always loved. But it wasn't printed anywhere on the disc. This is not the movie you watched when you were a kid, just so you know before you put your money in the rental machine. So I don't have 100% fully formed opinions about it. It's more of a question and open discussion. How do you feel about the recent release of Evangelion on Netflix, knowing that it's a completely different English dub, completely different English subs, even if it is better translated? Imagine that the original version had tons of mistakes. And by the way, I was recently doing a drawing video over on Doki Doki Drawing, and I said, oh, isn't it great that they fix things for the DVDs for anime? It's like it's another good excuse to get more money because they can charge more for the DVD release because they're working harder on fixing all the things that they didn't have time to fix before. And what he actually said to me, because he's like a veteran animator, he's been working on drawing anime for decades probably. He just said to me, well, I don't really deal with the DVD stuff. The stuff I draw has always been for the TV version, and in my opinion, the TV version is the real version. So I don't think it's really necessary to go around fixing all this stuff, because he said, don't you find that when you go and watch something old and full of mistakes, you kind of feel a love for it despite its flaws? It's maybe because of its flaws that you loved it. So who are these people to tell you that, well, we've made it better and now you should have this one only? You can't have the old one because that's not what we wanted to put out there anyway. It's like when authors decide that a certain character's sexuality was different after they said in the first 8 books that it was something, and then they just say, right before they retire from their authorial career, they'll be like, oh yeah, it turns out their sexuality was completely different. And you go, what? You've just changed everything. Is it really their right to go and meddle with characters that you've known and loved for ages, having a certain specific understanding of them? I often feel that, of course, a creator's work is a creator's work, but the moment it leaves the author's hands, it is also partially the property of the people who receive it. It's theirs in a way, as well as it's yours. They don't really have the rights to make money off it, maybe, but with creative work, the moment that you publish it and make it public, to a certain degree, it's no longer fully yours. And you have to understand that by continuing to make changes to it, people feel that you're making changes to something that is kind of theirs. It's a massively deep topic, and I don't have time to really talk about it all right now. I just wanted to say that Evangelion's on Netflix, and you should go and watch it. But I want to know in the comments, how do you feel about the fact that this isn't the version that I watched as a kid? And so whatever you watch, if this is your first time ever watching it, how do you feel about the fact that even if we tried to have a debate about the storylines in this show, that we can't actually do it without me watching the new version or you going and somehow finding the old version? I don't know, it's really complicated. I haven't got it really fully formed in my head. I really want to know what you think about it. Do let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video.